It was supposed to be a romantic weekend, just the two of us. But it didn't turn out that way. I had planned the weekend months in advance. Just the two of us. No deadlines, no book tours, no noise. A quiet lake house. A place to breathe. The boathouse had been in my family for decades. I inherited it when my father died, but somehow I never made the time to spend there. I was happy to finally get down to my quiet spot on the lake, but I wasn't expecting what came next. 2 days before we were set to leave, she ended it. No warning, just gone. I went anyway. I told myself I needed the air, needed the quiet. But really, I just couldn't stand the thought of sitting in that apartment with her memory in every corner. I really cared about her, obviously more than she cared about me. The cabin was colder than I remembered. The silence felt heavier. I unpacked like I meant to stay a weekend, but I didn't touch half the bags. On the second morning, I walked around the lake. No plan, no path, just me and the sound of my own steps pressing into the soft, damp earth. The kind of walk you take when you're trying to outpace your thoughts. The air was crisp, touched by the first breath of autumn. The trees along the shoreline had begun to turn, not fully, just hints, as if summer and fall were holding hands, not ready to part. Gold bled into green, rust crept along the edges of leaves like an old photograph curling at the corners. Mist clung to the surface of the water, and the lake itself was perfectly still, flat and silent, like a sheet of glass stretched to its edges. My reflection followed me in broken pieces. Then, through a break in the trees, I saw her. A baby doe, alone near the edge of the woods. She didn't run, she didn't even flinch. Just stared. Legs like twigs, ribs showing through her fur. I stood there for a while, thinking her mother must be close. I've heard mothers leave their babies alone while they go out and forage for food. I wasn't worried. I continued my walk along the water. As the sun started to lower on the horizon, I made my way back to the boathouse. To my surprise, hours later, the baby deer was still there. Same spot, same eyes. Alone. She followed me when I passed. Slow at first, tentative, but when I looked back, she was still behind me. I don't know why I picked her up. Instinct maybe. Or just, I saw something in her I understood. She was light, too light. Back at the cabin, I read everything I could about feeding a fawn. I boiled goat's milk that I got from a local farm, mixed in colostrum powder, made a little bed by the hearth. I didn't know what I was doing, but she trusted me, and somehow that mattered. The next day, she had a new light in her eyes. She followed me everywhere. When I sat down to write, she curled beneath my desk. When I went for a swim, she stood at the shore watching. When I lay in bed at night, she slept with me, her breath slow and steady. When a few days went by, and I knew she was out of the woods, I finally named her Rosie. The weekend passed, then a week, then a month. I didn't realize how lonely I'd been until I wasn't anymore. It was nice to have a little friend that relied on me for companionship, food, and shelter. She relied on me just as much as I relied on her. The little deer grew quickly. Her awkward legs steadied, her hollow ribs filled out, her coat darkened, and her eyes, always watchful, began to wander past the edges of the porch. She still followed me most days, on the trail, down to the dock, into the woods, but she also started testing distance, stepping farther ahead, pausing longer before returning. I could feel it before I admitted it. She wasn't mine to keep. She was a wild animal meant for the animal world. One day, I would have to let her go back to that world. But not yet. Not today. In the quiet hours, with Rosie by my side, I wrote. And for the first time in years, it came easily. No deadlines, no noise, just truth on the page. A story about grief, about being found when you didn't even know you were lost, about letting go. It became the best book I've ever written. As I wrote the last word, I knew I had created something that I could be incredibly proud of. I also know that my extended stay at the boathouse would have to come to an end. Reality has a way of catching up with you. The apartment in the city I'd been paying rent for had been sitting empty for months. Emails were piling up, messages unanswered. My name was still on the bestseller lists, but the world was beginning to move on without me. It was time. Time to pack the bags I never fully unpacked. Time to turn off the lights and lock the door behind me. Time to say goodbye, for now at least. Rosie stood at the tree line that morning, watching. I didn't call her. I didn't need to. She already knew. And still she didn't move. She let me walk to the car, let me open the door, let me take one last look. Then she turned, slow and graceful, and stepped into the trees. She didn't look back. And I sat there in the silence for a long time, on the verge of tears, before finally driving away. Within weeks of being published, the book took off. Bigger than anything I'd written before, a runaway bestseller. International press, interviews, tour dates. My name on screens and shelves I never imagined. Readers told me the story meant something to them, that it helped, that it healed. But what they didn't know was, it had healed me first. Somewhere in the blur of it all, I met someone. At a signing in Boston, she smiled as she handed me her copy. We started talking, and it didn't feel like promotion. It felt like home. I found someone to love again. I was as shocked as anyone. Months later, we decided to take a trip, just the two of us, back to the lake house. She wanted to see the place where I wrote that book, and I wanted to see if the silence still felt the same. The first morning after we arrived, I got up with the sun and stepped out for a walk. The trees had shifted again, taller, fuller, but the path felt the same beneath my feet. And then, I saw her, a baby deer in the brush, small, wide-eyed, still. My heart caught in my chest. Rosie. No, too young. But the way she looked at me, I couldn't help but remember. Then I heard a soft step behind her. Another doe emerged from the trees, older, stronger, familiar. That's my Rosie. She looked right at me. No fear, no hesitation. She walked forward slowly, like she'd done 100 times before. And when she reached me, she brushed her head gently against my side. I knelt down and kissed her on the forehead. She stayed there a moment, still and warm, and stared into my eyes. My friend was back. I put my arm around her neck and rubbed her forehead for as long as she would let me. In a few minutes, she turned back toward the woods, her fawn close behind. I was so grateful for that moment, knowing that she was happy and safe in the natural world without me. She had grown up into a beautiful doe. She came back the next morning, then the next, for a kiss on the forehead and a gentle neck scratch. Now, every time we return to the lake house, she finds her way back. She stays all weekend as her extended deer family waits in the trees, getting pets, getting love. She reminds me of that time when I felt so alone. She reminds me that she was real, that a friend sometimes walks on four legs and finds you when you least expect it. And every time I see her, I remember she was there when I needed her most. A friend, unexpected, undeniable, unforgettable. I'll see you next time, Rosie.